I'm Clayton.
I'm Miles.
I'm Blaine. I'm Zach. Our topic is school shootings and arming teachers, and we're now open for questions.
Okay, so why would we arm teachers?
So we would arm teachers in order to, one, like fend off anyone that would be interested in shooting up a school, because those that are coming into the school know that it takes the average time for the police to arrive at a school when there's a shooter is 18 minutes. And so that person knows when they walk into that school, I'm the only one with a firearm for 18 minutes. You know, so there's no fear of what they're doing. Like, there's no one that's going to stop them. So by having teachers that are armed, there'd be a sign on the front of the school that would say, staff and administration, there are armed personnel in the building. And so that might fend off some of the like, it would fend people off because they're afraid I'm going to get shot just as likely as I'm going to shoot somebody, I guess.
Okay, do you really want to give your teachers guns? I mean, you're gonna hand Mrs. Kett or Mr. Small or Mr. Mers a gun?
All right, so it wouldn't be every teacher. You would have the administration ask certain teachers who they feel qualified, and after that, they would have to go through a process, like a written test, a field test, probably the psych evaluation wouldn't hurt. Yeah, there would be a whole lot of steps to make sure they're qualified. So you're not just handing anybody a firearm.
Can you guys expand on that a little bit? Yeah, think about the qualifications in law enforcement and with our military. Then you can go a step further with the Secret Service, right? I mean, like, the psych evals that you talked about, training. So just because I can handle a firearm doesn't necessarily mean I'm the right person to be armed within a school. So you guys talk a little bit more about that background and how, one teacher might be qualified versus another?
Well, a big part of that would be someone has to be willing to take the life of another person. So that's a big part. Like, I mean, because Miss Kett, I talked to her, she would not take the life of another person, especially because a lot of times those that are shooting in schools are students. And so she was just saying, I would not be able to pull the trigger on possibly one of my students that I have a relationship with. So that's one thing, is they'd have to be able, like, and nobody knows really, even like you think you can do that, but you don't know until you get in the situation. Like, I can do that, and and just, I don't know, somebody else want to say.
So did you want like the background the teacher comes from, or like?
Well, yeah, a little bit of everything. I mean, like, so it's a big decision, right? So LCA institutes a policy tomorrow that we are going to arm teachers and administrators. And now here comes the selection process. I'd be really curious from a fellow teacher or as even more so a student. Mrs. Kett's packing a 357 now. How's that making you feel? And how did we decide it was her that's going to be packing it?
Well, I think that some of like the optimal candidates that would be carrying a firearm would be those that have been in the military or veterans. Like, we have a couple teachers here that I know were in the military or have good experience with guns, so they might go to them first, and then kind of that person.
I'll say, and also I was talking to Coach Ray on Friday, just asking him, and he does about 24 hours of training with firearms, like with professionals, and he spends about $1,000 a year. And he was just talking to Officer Hart about, like, what does he have to do to be able to carry in a school, because he feels, if it happens, he doesn't want to feel like I could have done more, but he doesn't have a firearm, so he really, you're limited in what you can do in response to a school shooting. And so he was, like, he has lots of experience with firearms. He shoots all the time. He hunts. A-Ray's another example. He hunts, he shoots. Like, guys or girls, women, that have experience outside before getting asked to do it would be opted, because they have a good understanding of how firearms work and what it really means. You know, hunting, like I hunt, you know, and like taking the life of a deer is nowhere near what it's like taking the life of a human, but I've never done that. But it's just like, I lost my train of thought. Can you restate your question?
No, I just was really curious, just kind of about that background, like, you know, how do we determine who will and who won't be armed if they become a new policy tomorrow?
And another thing, we were talking to Overton, Mr. Overton, and he packed at his other school and he has his concealed carry. So that would be another thing that the administration might look into is this person has their concealed carry already. So they have their permit, they've been evaluated by the feds, and they can do that. You know, so that might be another thing that they're trustworthy to.
So I want to follow up on some of the examples that you talked about. So you talked about Coach Ray, who might be interested. He teaches here one class towards the end of the day, and he's down in the basement. You talked about A-Ray. So he has one class. He's not always around, but he's kind of up at the front. So Overton's up there. So would you, if you were arming teachers, strategically place them through the room, throughout the building?
Yeah, usually you would spread them out just to cover as much area as possible. Just keep everyone, just prevent the amount of spaces in the building where there's like not an armed teacher near. You obviously strategically spread them out throughout the building just to make it more effective. Yes.
Would the students know that which particular teachers are armed?
Usually no, because any information that can be divulged to a student is just a little compromisation of safety. If somebody knows that a teacher has a weapon, they will stay away from where they can immediately protect. And so usually that information isn't divulged now.
Let me ask you this, because I know how the students work around here. What if the student comes up to you and say, "Hey, Miss Eiler, do you have a gun? Are you one of our teachers who armed?"
You just can't say anything.
Okay. Where would the firearms be stored?
On their person. You'd have concealed carry. No one would be able to see it. Overton did it at his past school, and he said the students never saw it. I don't know if they said some of the students found out. I don't know how, but he didn't tell us how. He didn't know how they found out because he didn't talk about it to anyone. He didn't talk about it to any of the faculty. It wasn't like, you know, hey, I'm packing. Are you packing? You know, it was. He was asked to do it, and so he did it, and that was that. He didn't talk about it to anyone.
Well, I'm out already, because then that's going to throw my wardrobe. But, think about, the way teachers are up and they're pointing, and how are you going to hide a firearm that you're wearing on your person?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Overton say something about how another teacher where he was had it in a lockbox?
Yep.
As opposed to on their person?
He had it in a safe, I think in a locked drawer of his desk. So it's kind of sort of quick access, but it's not like you're going to be accidentally flashing.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you've done a little bit of research. How is this topic received here at LCA?
We did a poll, polling a lot of the faculty and staff and teachers and everything, and I think it was around 50% of them, I don't have the stat in front of me right now, about 50% said that they would accept kind of the responsibility of carrying a weapon, and that compared to kind of the entire U.S. as a whole. They did a poll with, I think, about 500 teachers and people working in schools, and only 16% of them agreed to.
Do you know if in that study it was only public schools, or were there included other schools as well?
I did not mention it.
Okay. Did you have something, Clayton?
No.
Have you guys thought through or in your research, looking for liability, best and worst case scenarios? Not that there's really a best case scenario with an active shooter, but best and worst case scenarios, active shooter in the building, the teacher engages. Have you guys thought through those scenarios or studied up on that, or what the potential liability could be?
So when we talked to Mr. Overton, he did say if he had students in the room, he would not leave them. So he would stay in the room, he would barricade all of that we're supposed to do. But he did say if there was nobody in his room, he would kind of take cover in one of the doorways, so he can hopefully see the shooter before he sees him. But liabilities, we didn't really talk about.
Okay. You guys can see the gravity of what the liabilities might be, like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
From a legal standpoint, from a PR standpoint, long-term repercussions for the school and everybody involved there.
Yeah.
Can you make any comparisons with the air marshals that have been put on airplanes?
We didn't do much research on like, I guess, armed personnel elsewhere like that.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. And as long as we're talking about arming teachers, I want to take a little bit of a step back, and what specifically do you mean by that? Because I really think Ms. McKnight is all in arming herself with the wasp spray, but I'm assuming that's not exactly what you mean.
Yeah. When we are talking about arming teachers, we're talking about like a handgun, not just like a deterrent, I guess. Something with like stun.
And do you know what kind of weapon most school shooters typically used in the past?
I do not. I think it's handguns mostly, is what is most commonly used. Parkland was an AR-15. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So my question becomes then, is there any concern about how handgun might stand up against something with a little bit more firepower?
Well, yeah, you got it.
So it really comes down to how the user uses it, because a handgun can be a whole lot more effective than an AR if you know how to use it properly. So it all comes down to user.
Marksmanship is kind of, I think, what he's alluding to. Is like if you have someone with an AR but can't shoot worth a crap, and then you have someone with a pistol that can shoot, I mean, that's, you know who's going to win that.
Well, but even if your aim's bad, you can still do some damage to other students
Yes,
with
ma'am,
it.
you can do that. But
That's the whole
if
point
there
of
is,
AR is you don't have to be a very good shot,
well,
right? I mean, in a lot of ways, it.
I mean, if you're close, yeah,
covers.
it's hard to miss. When you're close, but, I was just gonna say, like in a firefight, like you look at the military, they burn a lot of ammo and they shoot every day. You know, they're some of the best shots in the world. And when they're in a firefight and there's some, you know, they miss people, you know, from here to the wall. It's like, you know, so a teacher or a student that is getting shot at, you're gonna miss. Like it just happens because you're rushed and you want to get the shot off before they.
Okay, well, that argument doesn't particularly help you, because if you're gonna miss, why bother arming you in the first
Yes,
place? To
that's-
make sure you're gonna hit your target.
Yeah, and that was another thing. I talked to Mr. Small, and he has his. Well, we don't have to go. Anyway, he said. I won't say that,
Yeah.
but he said personally he would not, just for fear of, he doesn't know what's on the other side of the wall. You know, so he, you know, if he does miss and that bullet goes through, he didn't know what was, you know. I'm not necessarily for or against it. I'm not entirely sure what my position is.
What are some of the cons? I mean, I think, like, what are some of the negative reasons why we would not want to arm teachers?
Probably the biggest one, and this sort of a bit ties into what Ms. Haller was saying, that if you were to just play a game of who can have the bigger gun at the school, it would get really dangerous really fast, and it would also get harder to store them safely. And so if you are in a situation where you have like a teacher is armed with a rifle, it would be much more catastrophic for that to get taken from them and used against them as opposed to a handgun. And so it's certainly one of the biggest ones is having the weapon used against the person the people it's supposed to protect.
What are your all's thoughts on, you know, thinking about school shootings now versus school shootings like, you know, really the first ones that really kind of came to light were back in the 1990s.
Yeah.
You know, and that's before the adaptation of social media. So we had, and really, you know, even the internet was kind of like relatively new. So think about back then, you know, we saw Columbine, it was all over broadcasting the traditional mainstream media. But now something happens and you have access to that instantaneously. Do you think that instantaneous population of news is perpetuating the school shootings? Because it seems like, I mean, not just school shootings, but just, you know, these random acts of violence in general. 'Cause there's a lot more of them today than there were 10 years or 20 years ago. So what are your kind of thoughts on that?
I think it can definitely play a role. I don't think that's the sole reason there's more now, because of what you're saying, the constant news. It's all the time, it's always going, it's always up to date. But I think that some people might want to do that because they want to be noticed. So they kind of want their face everywhere. So they go and do this, they know that it's gonna be on national news, local news, it's gonna be everywhere. But I think one of the real reasons that school shootings are so prevalent today is because of social media and stuff. Because most of the shooters that we researched, they felt lonely, they were bullied, everything. And I feel like with social media, it becomes so much more easy to bully that so many more people are being bullied, and it kind of can lead into this.
So are you asking like what is the causation of?
Yeah, yeah, just, you know, then versus now. Like, why is there so much more of it, right?
I'm glad you asked. So, well, we'll start. It's the decline, the moral decline of American society is what the cause is. So, back in the, I think it's the 30s, the government decided we're going to take God out of education. So, and ever since then, we've been moving away from God at the center of our nation. Now, God is not the center of our nation. So, and that leads to broken homes. Now we're seeing more single parent homes, which is being encouraged by the government with the welfare system. And so, like now, people are being encouraged to get married out of, or have kids out of wedlock because the government's going to pay us. And so then you're doing that, and you're having a parent that's working all the time, neglecting their kids. So, and then at school, the kids aren't being loved; they're just being taught how to take tests, like it, you know, because there's not the love of God in the schools. And so they're, you know, they don't have love, and only 20% of people in America go to church regularly. So those kids, you know, there's 80% of people that are not seeing the love of God regularly. And so these kids are being neglected, they're not getting loved, and they're playing, you know, violent video games, you know, watching violent TV, whatever, you know, and there's no consequence for them in video games to shoot people, you know, and so then they get that in their head. It's like, well, these kids are hating me at school, you know, and there's no consequence in this video game, nobody loves me, you know, why not? And they're also being taught with evolution, everything is random. You're here by chance, you have no purpose, you have no meaning, you know, so it's a moral decline in society, and that's why it's happening.
And great research, great thoughtful response. You were kind of waiting for that one to be teed up, huh?
So based on that, Zach, since we're here at LCA and Christ should be the center of our school, do you think we have less of a likelihood of a school shooting, or are there other factors to consider?
Being a private school, I definitely think there's a less chance. And plus the teachers here, all of them are here because they want to love on the students. Like the education, I think, is secondary because they could go to a public school and get paid twice as much. So they're not here for the money, and they say that all the time, and a lot of people don't believe it, but I do believe it. Like they're here because they want to love on students and show the love of Jesus to them. So I think it's very unlikely that it would happen here because there's definitely someone here, there's a student that is lonely that would love on them, you know, and plus there's students here that are being impacted by the teachers and they can spread the love of Jesus to them too. So I think it's unlikely to happen at LCA.
So I'm gonna take the other side of that for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask you, how long have each of you been at LCA?
I've been here since, I believe, first grade.
Okay.
Fifth grade.
7th grade.
Okay, so you've been here a long time. Have any of you been bullied?
Yeah.
Okay, so even though Christ should be the center of our place, students are still learning, still growing. We still all do stupid stuff. So